My name's Guy Thallon. I'm a third year PhD student at Cranfield University, and the title of my project is Soil for Life, Integrated Farm Data for the Protection and Promotion of Soil Health. My project focuses on looking at developing an information system, and that's Soil for Life, which allows us to integrate data from the farms that supply produce into that fresh produce company, and then using that data in a scientific context to allow us to understand how that soil is being used and managed. So my research is very applied. I work with farmers and growers on a kind of almost daily basis and talk to them about their soils and how they're managing their soils. And there's two sides of it. There's the opportunity to inform directly what their management practices are doing and inform the kind of day-to-day challenges that users have with soil, but then also there's the opportunity to use that data and to aggregate data from a whole series of farms so that we can look at that on aggregate and look at the relationships that exist between variables such as kind of cropping practices, and then understand how that translates to soil health as well. So I'm lucky enough in my project to work within a fresh produce supply chain. So I work with a fresh produce supplier, I work with the growers within that supply, but then I also have engagement with the supermarkets and ultimately the consumers there buying food in those supermarkets. And I think there's seeing that supply chain and seeing where that produce comes from in terms of food and its deliverance and it kind of moving up all the way through the chain. You really appreciate the fact that we don't understand where food comes from and really don't understand the complexities that go into that and the challenges that go into that. So I think from a kind of consumer perspective, in terms of all of us going out and buying our carrots or potatoes or whatever, I think the more we can promote as a scientific community the importance of the land that we're farming and the soils, the better really, because I think it just informs everyone and it means that we can respond to those challenges such as food security, such as climate change, population growth, all these really big challenges. We can respond as a whole in a more constructive way. We've been challenged as a scientific community and as farming by the government to look at sustainable intensification, and that's the UK's response to food security. So this idea that we have a finite amount of land, and that land that we're farming to produce food is demanded for a whole host of different demands. And I think we've seen over the last few years, specifically with some of the extreme weather events, that some of that land that we're farming really isn't up to scratch in terms of its resistance and resilience to things like water and being able to get water out of the way or hold on to water in the right way, and just causes that many more challenges. So I think there's, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, with real intensification of our farming systems, there's been kind of a lot of taking from the land rather than managing it in a way that drives it forward sustainably. In terms of communicating the science, I don't know, it's a hugely challenging area. I think there's a lot of work recently going into this idea of ecosystem goods and services, this idea that the land gives us so much more than just the produce that comes off it. And it's sometimes takes us a little while to get your head around how that operates and how that works and how something as complex as climate change comes back to functions that are going on in your back garden. And I think it's really a challenge for our community to really make that link between the processes and the challenges. And I think by talking about what we get from the land, we can do that. I'm a passionate environmentalist, and I think there's a number of ways you can approach being an environmentalist. You can either go out with your placards and go and protest and shout about the new nuclear power plant being built, or go and shout about the woodlands being torn down, or you can come at it from a kind of more pragmatic perspective and get into a business where you're kind of really working to drive change and drive change in the way that business operates, drive change in the way that businesses' customers operate, their suppliers, and all the way through. So really kind of the inside man type thing. And I'd like to think that I can have a career as that kind of role, or a facilitator doing that type of work, and really see some change in my lifetime, which would be pretty cool really.